From Vassar College, this is Conversations at the Salt Line with Wesley Dixon.
On this episode, a conversation with John Wardock.
Hello, everyone. It is me, Wes, and welcome to another episode of Conversations at the Salt Line. On today's episode, we have a very special guest. You'll understand why in a second, but I would love to welcome John Wardock, Vassar alum, class of 91, to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
So nice to be here, Wes.
Happy to have you. You know, one of the funny things about having you here is that you are in a special group of people on this podcast. I kind of told you what the group is, but you want to know what it is?
Yeah, go ahead and tell me.
I'll tell you again.
Yeah.
The class of 91 has been overrepresented on this podcast. I'll tell you who's been on it so far.
Yeah, go ahead.
We've had Stacey London.
Yeah.
Jason Blum. Elise Hogue.
Nice.
And now John Wardock.
Oh, wow.
How do you feel being part of that special, cabal, if you will?
Maybe you need to rename the podcast, the Class of 91 podcast.
No. I'll just let you all have bragging rights in your alumni Facebook group. You're old enough to be on Facebook still, so I'm sure you all can brag there in ways that I would not see.
Yeah.
You know, for obvious reasons, this is a really cool podcast for me to do. Of course, I've known you for some time, but also it's very meta, as the young people say, because we're on a podcast with someone who is sort of a veteran and an executive in the podcast world talking about podcast.
Yeah.
It's a lot going on there.
Yeah, and who knew when I was here years ago that there would be something called podcasting, right?
Absolutely.
When I went to Vassar back when there were dinosaurs roaming right in front of the library over there, I worked for a local radio station, WKIP, for 3 years, and that's how I would make my money, and it was great. And I got to meet a lot of different politicians. I covered then Mario Cuomo, who was governor, and Senator Moynihan, and it was a phenomenal experience. I learned not just about Vassar, but the Poughkeepsie community beyond in the Hudson Valley. Okay. And who knew back then all that would eventually lead to a career at a national podcast network?
Yeah, well, I want to pause at your time at Vassar a little bit because I think you've given us a great summary, but I know there's much more to that time. And you are here on campus now as part of Sophomore Career Connections, reflecting on your career for those who are preparing for their career. And I just want to sort of ask you to tease out some of the insights and the lessons that you were able to glean by engaging while as a student at Vassar in some extra sort of Vassar affairs or sort of engagements that helped you prepare for your career later on.
One thing that when I was here, I was involved in some of the journalism publications and so on, and then I was practicing journalism off campus too, right? But the one thing that Vassar always seemed to instill was be fair-minded, be open-minded. Because I was a poli-sci and history double major.
Perfect.
Rockefeller Hall.
Still here.
Yeah, still here. And we had some debates. Yeah. I was here during the tail end of the Reagan years and, Reagan this, Reagan that, the Cold War, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, it was all about listening to the other person. And that's one thing I took with me as I entered journalism. After Vassar, I went to Columbia Journalism School. And then from there, I went to Bloomberg, and then I went to the Associated Press for about a year, and then off to what was then CBS Market Watch, and then the Wall Street Journal eventually. Mm-hmm. So along that journey, be fair-minded, be accurate, and all that started here on campus.
That's incredible. At that time, in the late 80s, early 90s, when you were both a student here, but also sort of a local journalist in the Hudson Valley, I'm curious if you could reflect on what maybe the word is tenor of journalism was, or what your experience of it was. And I ask that question because we hear a lot today about sort of the, whether it's polarization or chargedness, if you will, of being a journalist or being in that space. And I'm curious if you can reflect back on what it felt like to be a journalist at that time.
Back then, you always got the other side of the story. You always tried to dig deeper. You always tried to look for what's the day two story. Mm-hmm. Don't do the story just on day one, but how can you follow up and do the day two story? And when I used to cover the Dutchess County Legislature, the news director would call and say, I need you to go cover this. And I would go cover the local county legislature. It would be a locally important issue. And then I would go down in the front lobby of the main building where there was a Poughkeepsie Journal newspaper vending machine.
Yeah.
And I would get the Pojo to see how well did I, in my reporting for WKIP, stack up with what the Pojo was reporting. So, funny things like that. But I got to be accurate. My news director is going to get upset if I'm not accurate, right? Yeah. So I would always judge my work based on what the local reporter was doing at the Poughkeepsie Journal.
That's so incredible. We're going to come back to local journalism in a little bit, but I sort of wanted to take us out of your college experience for a moment, and you sort of just articulated sort of the trajectory post-graduate school, sort of your rise in sort of media journalism broadly to about 2004, 2006, right? 2004 is when the term podcast was first sort of coined or used or seen. Yep. And then I understand, went to the Wall Street Journal around 2006 to sort of lead their digital and their podcasting efforts.
I was at marketwatch.com in 2006. So the way the folklore was handed down was Apple was looking for content to go on.
To put on their new device.
Their device, right? It's like, okay, great. So they reached out, and the Journal started podcasting in the fall of 2005, and MarketWatch started in, I was told, January of 2006. I actually did research on this because, so we started experimenting with audio online. We were doing that even before then. It's like, how can we take an MP3 file and put it on there for people to listen to the website? And so podcasting does have its origins way back then. And looking back on that time, I was at MarketWatch, and then I MarketWatch until 2013, and then that's when I took over the Wall Street Journal radio network and all the podcasting operations and everything. Even just 10 years ago, people were asking, what's a podcast?
Right.
What's a podcast? How do I listen to a podcast? And then the ad sales people would say, how do I know anyone's listening? Why would someone want to put an ad on this podcast, So, oh my God. We're not really asking those questions anymore, thankfully, but it was like the Wild West back then. I can imagine.
So I wanted to pause there for a number of reasons. One, I want to hear the sort of real history from a media and journalism perspective on that point. But I think for others listening, even if they don't have as fervent of an interest in media and journalism, I think everyone listening can understand and appreciate that industries, the world, have and will continue to face inflection points that feel disorienting, right? And so I think the broader rise of podcasts, particularly at the Journal, I think probably coincides with general sort of trends about print media, right? And so as you pause at that inflection point in your career and in the industry that you happen to have worked in for a long time, what are some of the reflections, or what are some of the emotions or feelings or insights you can think about and share with those who are curious about it in their own lives, their own fields? Yeah,
journalism is going through, I would say media in general, going through huge change right now. And I don't know what's going to happen in the next 2, 3, 5 years, because it is changing so quickly that no one seems to be able to wrangle this tiger. So at the end of the day, you got to stick to your core principles. And if you're a reporter, it comes down to fairness and accuracy. Unfortunately, there's so many alternatives to mainstream journalism now, whether it's someone going on TikTok or someone going on X, formerly known as Twitter. And how do you keep up with that? Also going on, you've had really a sad story with local journalism.
Yeah,
with local newspapers dying off, radio and TV not putting as much resources into covering local politics, unfortunately. So when you wrap all that together...
Yeah, it's a perfect storm.
It's a perfect storm. It's a chaotic storm.
Yep.
And, I think about this every day. that where is all this going?
Yep.
Because as a guy who, the Cumulus Podcast Network is one of the largest out there. Last year, we were one of the top 10 free channels on Apple. Huge numbers. It's taken a lot of work, though. We have our slogan is Big, Bold Voices, and our company slogan is Every Voice Matters. Okay. So we have conservative talkers. We work with Rolling Stone. We have some sports guys like Rich Eisen. It's amazing. I mean, if I had a Thanksgiving dinner and had everyone over to the house, it would be one hell of a Thanksgiving dinner, right? So I'm thinking of all this right now, and how do we take what we have with our content creators and how do we roll them out to get them noticed? Because TikTok has to be part of your strategy now as a podcaster, Instagram, Facebook,
right,
and then YouTube Shorts. So I'm constantly thinking, how do I take the content we're creating and how can we attract a new audience? And
there's a whole bunch there I want to sort of delve into a little bit. And I do want to come back to the 04, 05, 06 time to sort of think about at that moment in history, sort of now that we passed it, sort of what we've learned from the creation of the new thing called podcast. But we'll get back to that in a second. But you sort of talk about the bold voices and everyone having a voice for the Cumulus Network in particular. And then you said, there's a need for all these different strategies to be seen, right? TikTok, whatever else. It makes me think about the potential, not the necessity, but the potential for some of the nuance to get lost, right? Because we are in some ways we're selling in a quick sort of short attention span market, i.e. TikTok and Instagram and whatever else, right? And so I'm wondering how, or if you have concerns about all of the voices or all the perspectives getting sort of lost or crowded out. We also are existing in a market and in a world that demands certain kinds of, interactions or reactions or whatever else to the content we're making.
Yeah, one thing that concerns me is we live in silos now. We all belong to different tribes. And I think that nature that we're going through in America right now is also seen in our politics. So in the world of podcasting, people listen to what they like. I listen to everything because, quite honestly, I'm involved in our content acquisition strategy. Who should we be looking at bringing on? And then I work with agents. They call and they pitch people.
Right.
So I have to think about that in terms of how do we bring on people? Where could we make a difference bringing on these different voices? And then out there, I'm always trying to look beyond just a certain silo. So who could appeal to women listeners or non-white males, non-sports fans, right? Because I'm a programmer in many ways.
Right.
In fact, I'm involved in our corporate programming efforts and how podcasting fits into that in the digital age. So I'm always trying to go beyond not just 1, 2, 3, but I'm trying to get to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in trying to find new listeners.
Yep. It's funny. Audience is, of course, a key question. And I made a joke about an ageist joke, I will admit, about Facebook earlier and the audience for that. But I think it's a relevant question for podcasting as well, right? And I, in my own life, for the Vassar podcast, people would say, how do I find that? Where is it? Like, why do I listen to it? When would I listen to it? Why are podcasts like a thing even? They're so strange to me. I like the radio still. So as we think about the audience for podcast, you probably have data or just intuitive knowledge on this, sort of who makes up the largest part of the general podcast audience, and where is attention focused, or where should it be focused if we're thinking about trying to be responsive to the particular audience of the podcast?
There's been a lot of growth in recent years among women, among Black Americans, among younger folks. At Cumulus, we do a lot of research. We work with a big notable company, Edison Research, which also works with NPR and Amazon and others. And one thing we're always looking at, where's the next generation of listener? And what we have seen is this surge. In fact, I brought you a stat that I'm going to share Let me see if I can find it here. So
too many
coming up on the train, I had some time to do some research. So we recently found that the percentage of 18 to 34-year-olds is surging when it comes to podcast listening. 18 to 34.
Okay.
So that's college age and then probably graduate school, if lucky, and then onward.
Yep.
2016, 11% were listening to podcasts.
In that age group.
Yes. Care to guess what it is now?
You said it was 11%.
In 2016, in 2023, it was...
I'm going to guess. We can play Price is Right rules. I'll say like 40%.
Oh my God, you looked at my notes.
No, I did. I can't even see.
Yeah, okay, 39.5%.
I would have lost.
Yeah,
Right
but
rules, I was close.
we have a consolation prize for you. Okay,
thank you.
So I bring that up because, again, thinking like a programmer,
Yeah.
how do I go about reaching those folks?
audience, yeah.
Right. So that's the next generation, and it's funny. The reason why we got into podcasting when I was back at Dow Jones was because we had the Wall Street Journal and Market Watch Radio. We had massive radio networks. We had like over 600 affiliates. But we had bosses who were also saying, how do we get to the next audio listener?
Oh, I see. They
Right?
were not radio listeners.
Yeah, because we knew that there's a shift going on, right? Because that was after the dot-com bust. The internet was coming on strong. So, okay, what do we do? And video was also, when I was at CBS Market Watch, the video folks used to get a lot of love and attention. And I had a boss who said, we need to put audio out there too. and that's really how podcasting started when I was at Dow Jones, at Market Watch, and eventually the Journal, was how do we go out and get that next radio listener and convert them into a podcast listener?
I don't know the data on this, and I'm not sure if you do either, but I am curious because, when we think about, in many ways, the growth of something often correlates to the sort of waning of something else, right? Sort of digital print news sort of came at the expense of print news, and to say it crassly, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just curious if we have seen the same thing and what the relationship between podcasting and radio ship listening is, if you will. And I say that because I actually still listen to the radio a lot, and I love the radio and I love podcasts, right? There's it's not a zero-sum game for me between those two entities, right? But I'm curious from your industry expertise, what the truth is about the relationship between those two platforms today.
It's funny you mention that because I work for a company that owns over 400 radio stations.
Yes.
So podcasting is part of that. And I will meet with hosts. I will meet with market managers, whether it's San Francisco or Chicago or wherever, Washington. And we will strategize about how podcasting fits into radio. And I often tell hosts, if you have a big-time guest on, I live in Washington, D.C., outside Washington, D.C., our local station there has all sorts of well-known elected officials on. And I tell the hosts, listen, not everyone is starting at the very beginning of the interview. Use your podcast as an on-demand experience. At the end of your radio interview, say, listen, if you didn't hear Senator so-and-so, the whole thing, go to the podcast and you'll find the podcast on Apple or Spotify or Amazon Music or wherever you listen.
I think that's beautiful. In my personal opinion, I love that story and love that sort of, one might say, symbiotic relationship, because I think, again, back to sort of this 0406 time, it's very natural, I imagine, for people to feel like something new and innovative happens at the expense of what they know, right? And I think one of the cool sort of potential salt lines for this podcast is that the growth of podcast does not necessarily mean the erasure of other things, right? It can come with sort of a helpful relationship with radio, right? That can demonstrate to people that industries, innovations, entities can exist together, and there's enough space for all of these things, right? But I'm sure that wasn't the feeling in 04 through 06, right? So
no, because there was a nervousness like, oh my God, podcasting is coming to get us, right? Or what's going to happen here? It's funny you mention that, because who better to tell stories? Whether you're a newscaster, in Los Angeles or wherever, who better to work on podcasting? And that's part of the initiative. Podcasting is an extension. It's part of the family now, right?
Yeah.
And here's something else. You mentioned about concerns, right?
Yeah.
About, okay, my concern is what is going to eat away at podcasting now? Some people say, oh, it's video, it's YouTube or whatever.
Yeah.
But now with the rise of YouTube as a podcast destination, there are surveys out there, guys I know who are working on surveys and studying, doing audience research studies, that people will listen to one podcast, on Apple, and then maybe the next day they're home or it's the weekend, and they'll watch that podcast on YouTube. It's like, oh my God. So, Monday is Apple, and then Thursday is YouTube. And if you're on the train, whatever, it's amazing. So I don't fear the rise of YouTube or video, because I know, and look at what you're doing. You have an audio version and you have a video version.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely. It's so funny. I'm laughing because I am the person you're describing. I mean, there are certain podcasts, and we'll ask what you listen to in a second, but there are podcasts that I listen to almost exclusively. I should say watch, because I only watch them. I don't listen to them exclusively. I have to see, the interactions, what they're wearing, sort of just like the energy of the conversation based on the content or theme of that podcast.
Yeah.
And there are others that it means nothing to me to listen to them only and not see the audio or not see the video, because the video just adds no, for me, adds no sort of additional sensory information. So I am that person. You saying this has me curious about what other potentially unique or unexpected behaviors you've been able to glean from people by sort of studying consumer research around podcasts or video or radio.
Yeah. One thing, this is some research that came out last year. One reason why people like watching podcasts is because they like the emotion on faces.
Yeah.
And yes, that's something you can't get listening on Apple, right? So I totally get that.
Yeah.
There's also some evidence out there that when you hear about a sponsor being, someone's reading a sponsorship, this podcast brought to you by blah, that it also resonates too, right?
Yeah.
So there are some things brewing on that front, brewing.
That's so
Here,
interesting.
I said brewing here at Vassar, home of the Brewers.
Pun intended.
Yes, pun intended. So we are watching for things like that as we go forward.
Interesting. We mentioned earlier, and I want to spend a good amount of time on this. I think it's really important. We mentioned earlier, you mentioned, I should give you credit for that, the decline of local journalism, right? And that's no secret. I think many folks who are in media certainly know this has been the case for the last decade and a half, 2 decades, right? I think, in fact, PBS said as recently as 2023 that since 2005, there's been about 2,500 local papers that have gone by the wayside, right? And the concern I think people have, I'm going to lay out an argument for you. The concern is that, of course, with the decline of local journalism, there is sort of a polarization, erosion of democracy, right? There's sort of less data points, less sort of local information, and we start to sort of see these very generalized, again, reductionist news stories that seem polar at the sort of larger news outlets, right? That's a concern. I'm suggesting that's a concern, right? Many folks I think would say that.
Yep.
At the same time, in ways that you've just described, podcast listenership, but also sort of podcast content, whether it's by episodes or sort of podcast sort of series, has grown exponentially, right? And I'm curious about that, right? Not because of this sort of erasure comment we mentioned earlier about print media. That is concerning, but that's not what I mean. What I mean is that how do these things relate to each other relative to the health of our democracy, right? If we buy that journalism and media and content and information are essential parts of having a healthy democracy, what is this sort of evolution, this decline and this growth of different things mean for our democracy?
I'm worried about this, and I say this as a citizen, not as an executive at a
executive, yeah.
Yeah, I say this as a citizen. I think about this a lot because when I worked at Bloomberg Radio in the early 90s, after Columbia, I started working at Bloomberg. This guy named Mike Bloomberg came along and bought a radio station and then eventually started TV in 93. Okay. And I was at Columbia and working at Bloomberg. simultaneously in my spring year, and I had no idea what day of the week it was. I was so tired. But one of the things I used to get to do was go cover the mayor. And Rudy was the mayor, Rudy Giuliani, and I would go cover. And I did phone interviews with him. When he was going somewhere to Brooklyn, I would go and find out what the story was. I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about whether that's going to be happening 5 and 10 years ago. Are there going to be reporters covering the mayor?
Yeah.
Not just of New York City, but anywhere.
Right.
You know, and
especially places like not New York City, right? I mean, New York City is going to get the coverage because of New York City, right?
Yes.
It may not be the best coverage, but look at coverage. I'm thinking about, you know, my mom's from Columbus, Mississippi, right? Like these small towns that are part of the 2,500 that's lost their paper, for example, right? Those are the places that I'm most concerned about in the next few years, and now not having the coverage. Yeah, and part of the role of journalism is to keep people honest. To keep people honest, keep your local officials honest. Yeah. So I, as a citizen, I worry about that. Where is all this going? Right. And so then that worry we share, and the potential optimism with an asterisk on it that I could have is that podcast as a democratizing media sort of platform, entity, platform, whatever, could, in the best world, sort of fill some of that void, right? Yes. And maybe we've seen that happening in certain places, right? I mean, my local paper in Fort Lauderdale, the Sun Sentinel, has incredible podcasts that are companion podcasts that do a lot of local reporting on things that are very sobering, but important things for folks to know about, right? I love that. And so there's an example for me in the ways in which local journalism can sort of be revived or revitalized through podcasts. But I'm sure the story is not always as rosy as the way I've just described it. Yeah, you have to make money. At the end of the day, or you need to have sponsors, right? If you're in public media, you need sponsorships. 2023 was a rough road for journalism and for podcasting. You had Spotify, 3 rounds of layoffs. NPR got rid of shows. SXM laid off people. It was tough in podcasting because the economy, there was all that uncertainty. Remember all the talk about the Federal Reserve hiking interest rates to try to get inflation under control, and that would touch off a recession. Can you tell I used to work for Bloomberg, the Wall Street Journal, and MarketWatch.com? MarketWatch, right, exactly. Yep. So, you know, the Journal reporters are phenomenal, by the way, and I miss working with them some days. So it's but phenomenal reporters, right? Yeah. So the point being, is there going to be money for that local reporter to do an in-depth story to keep the mayor honest? And I don't know. Certainly, I don't know either. But I'm curious to try to figure out if there's a conclusion to be made. What should that conclusion be about the fact that we're dealing with this sort of dynamic, right? Is it a concern to us that we might deduce reasonably that there is a lesser value societally on journalism, such that like relatively, you know, expected swings in our economy result in aggressive cuts in funding of journalism, right? I mean, you would imagine it's sort of like a canary in the coal mine for democracy, right? That we're willing to let go support for journalism when things are a little bit tough. Yeah, it's also a matter of market forces, right? Yeah. If companies are pulling back on advertising, that's going to impact everyone. Podcasting wasn't alone in feeling the pain, correct? Right? Look what's going on in the tech sector with job cuts. Even at big tech companies, right? So we're shifting here. My hope long term is that we stabilize. Podcasting becomes part of coverage for local journalists. You have to do some video, you have to do a podcast, and then away you go, filing for the web or whatever is going to be next out there. So I think podcasting is here to stay at the local level. It's just someone's going to have to come up with a better way of probably funding it. Okay. Because it takes bodies, right? It takes people. And who's going to pay those bodies, and where does the money come from? Yeah. How do you generate the revenue? Yeah. It's funny, when I was reading about some of the trends in the decline of local print media, one article in PBS was, I think, positively reflecting on the growth of sort of nonprofit digital news sort of organizations who, to your very point, I think are committed to funding in robust ways digital news in places where print news had gone away in ways they probably really needed it, right? And so one can imagine that there could be a world in which the kind of meaningful content that could come through podcasting was supported philanthropically by folks who feel like it's a necessity for society to have that kind of media content.
Yeah, and I think that's an opportunity for podcasting, doing longer in-depth stories, doing special series. I think there is some hope there. I think there are a lot of issues in this country that need to be addressed. The question is, boy, how are we going to fund someone going out and covering, poverty for 6 weeks or whatever? Can you really have a reporter go out and do that? Hey, you don't have to cover City Hall for the next 6 weeks. Right. You're going to go do an in-depth story about poverty in our local community. Right. So that has to happen first, right? Yeah. How are we going to be able to put that forward? How is someone be able to go do that?
Absolutely.
And if we can solve for that through some of these local not-for-profit initiatives out there that are happening in local journalism, maybe that's the path forward.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some of the limitations of podcast. I don't say that to be negative. I say it because I think everything has sort of pros and cons. And I think as sort of a relatively new and shiny thing, it's easy to focus on the desirable candy-like aspects of podcasts. But there are some limitations I can imagine, right? One of them, I should say, seems to be that podcasts, unlike maybe radio or television, is a relatively unregulated sort of media platform, if you will. I'm not sure the SEC has anything to do with podcasts, right? Exactly.
No.
So given your experience both professionally and personally, sort of what do you think are some of the risks of the proliferation of podcasts?
Yeah, there does seem to be a need for a referee, but would that have a chilling effect on the Wild West effect of all these opinions out there, right?
Right.
And then how are you going to go about regulating all these voices? And what do you do if someone says something wrong, so...
Wrong as in not factual.
Yeah, wrong or inaccurate or defamatory, right? Oh my God. There are about 5 million podcasts right now. I haven't seen the latest numbers, but it's around that. Who's going to police all that?
Right.
And so you really can't. I'm a First Amendment enthusiast. I'm not so sure. Also, I want someone, being the referee.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's probably a platform problem. It's Apple's responsibility. It's YouTube's responsibility. It's Spotify's responsibility, right?
Got it.
Just like this big debate about what's Facebook's role in stuff that gets on there, or what is X's role. So you could extend that to Apple, Spotify, YouTube,
right.
Whether we really want to do that. I'm not so sure. I have mixed opinions on whether we should be regulating podcasts.
So you're a reasonable person, so you have multiple opinions about it, obviously.
Yeah.
But tying it back to our previous conversation, you can extend that particular concern to the concern about sort of, our health of our democracy, right? Sort of we're sort of seeing the rise of podcasts, the possibility for, I won't say corruption, but for disinformation to be proliferated because of the lack of a referee per se, right? And the impact of that is potentially concerning, right? And I just don't know what to make of the space being unregulated in the way that it currently is, because the impacts could be really harmful in the ways that we've thought they might be for other kinds of speech that we've determined should be looked after, I guess, right?
Yeah, I would once again say, if a company employs someone, it's probably the company's responsibility to make sure that the host is being forthright and honest and accurate. Leave it up to the local company, the company to take care to address the issue, rather than have the government step in and try to take things over.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When we think about sort of not what's next in terms of what's after podcast, but let's say today is Friday, and you go to work on Monday, or actually no, it's a holiday. You go to work on Tuesday, and you're thinking about the next kind of podcast that your company wants to sort of produce, or the kind of thing you want to sort of be a part of. What are the top few questions that sort of drives the kind of content you all are willing to support and then amplify?
It's funny you mention that, because I have a podcast development document that I share with content creators to get them to think about what will make your podcast different. Mm-hmm. Why will someone want to listen to your podcast? And one of the questions I put on there is, if you're in an elevator with someone, it's the old elevator pitch scenario. Tell me in less than 60 seconds why your podcast will matter. Mm-hmm. And it's funny how people struggle with that. And there has been, a rise of vanity projects out there, and you can tell almost instantly
when it's a vanity project.
When it's a vanity project, yes, because after like 4 episodes or whatever, it's like
nothing to talk about.
Yeah. Or they run out of ideas.
Right.
They come, hey, we want to do it. It's like, okay, great. Well, what are your first 20 episodes about?
Right.
Who are your first 10 guests? Right. Mm-hmm. It's like, really? Yeah, it's hard work.
Yeah,
podcasting is hard work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then that's what sort of so that's sort of the criteria. What are some examples of things? I mean, you have a whole network of podcasts, but what are some of the things that do answer that criteria in terms of things that really make something a good podcast? Yeah,
storytelling. At the end of the day, it's about storytelling. Mm-hmm. Can you captivate your audience from the first minute to the last minute? One thing I do a lot of is look at analytics. I look at Apple metrics, I look at Spotify metrics, I look at YouTube metrics to see how long a host retains the audience. A big reason for that is because we have commercials. People pay a lot of money to be in some of our big podcasts.
Of course.
So we need to know that the audience is hearing the ads.
Right.
So I will track completion rates, skip rates. Mm-hmm. These are technical things in podcasting. And I will see, okay, where are they dropping off? Mm-hmm. And then where's the audience disappearing, right? Mm-hmm. And then I will flag it, and then we'll talk to the host.
Gotcha.
And then I offer tips and tactics for getting around that. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, the goal here is to get people to listen longer.
Got it.
I don't expect everyone to listen to every podcast for every single minute, but if I can get you through the mid-roll break,
right,
where some big company is paying, gazillion dollars, we've succeeded.
Right.
And the other thing that's going to happen here with the rise of YouTube, and full disclosure, we're working with YouTube on some things. We work with Apple, we work with Spotify. With YouTube now, YouTube is, you go on YouTube and you go on to the next thing in like 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. So how do you retain an audience on YouTube now before someone goes off and decides to watch that video on water skiing squirrels? Right. So let's keep them here at the podcast. So these are the different challenges we're facing with audience retention.
Yeah. It's so funny. I am that person. I have random YouTube rabbit holes that I go down. The most recent was this random piece of like a desert or a game reserve in Kenya, and there was these alligators that have been there for generations, they say, and they have these odd migratory things, and I love watching these alligators and the other animals in this sort of the Masa Masai, what they call it, navigate their life. So we all have a version of our random pieces of content. It's funny because, clearly it's a business, as we said earlier. Podcasting is a business, right? Mm-hmm. And I can't help but think about the ways in which that makes it then difficult to sort of have what you said earlier, sort of the bold voice, and more importantly, sort of the every voice sort of be able to exist, right? Mm-hmm. Because there just might not be a business case for every voice, right? How do you all balance that?
Yeah, and I think 2023, we saw the bubble burst in some ways, right? I'm not saying anything that's, earth-shaking here. Yeah. To have important popular shows at NPR go away, to have WNYC in New York City get rid of some of its shows. Even big shows go through what I would say commercial challenges. Mm-hmm. And in 2023, we had fewer feeds start. The fewest number of feeds, an RSS feed is at the core of the business since 2018, according to Listen Notes. They did an excellent job looking into this. That suggests some people have given up on the idea of podcasting, right? And that's probably the guy who wanted to do the local sports podcast about the Green Bay Packers who decided, something, maybe I'm not going to do this after all. Mm-hmm. So that is a concern out there about will every voice eventually break through?
Right. Being
realistic, I would say probably not. But that makes the big, bold voices even more special because they did break through.
Right. It makes them special, and to play devil's advocate, for lack of a better word, it might make them, I'm hesitating to say this word, it might make their content more dishonest. Not dishonest in like they're telling lies. I don't mean it like that, but I mean it's more generalized. I guess it make it less nuanced, right? In ways that people see themselves less in, or they're just sort of, maybe I'm a purist, but there's less beauty in sort of in those stories, maybe, right? Because they know they have to stay big and bold to stay sort of alive.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and a lot of the voices on our network, we have Lala Kent from Vanderpump Rules. At one point, that was a top 10 show on Apple last year. During the whole scandal time.
I'm sure many listeners have no clue what that is. I happen to be a Bravo fan, so I do know.
Well, if you don't know, okay, season 11 starts soon, okay?
Exactly.
And you got to listen to Give Them Lala with Lala Kent. My team works on that. It's wonderful. Yeah. But part of the Big Bold Voices strategy is having these people who break through all the crap out there, for lack of a more sophisticated term. There is so much stuff out there to consume, and it's all on our phones, right? So how do you break through? And part of having the Big Bold Voices strategy is we always are looking to keep the drum beating, right? And some folks, whether it's Rich Eisen because he's an NFL Network guy and been involved in football for so many years. Okay, when football starts, boom. Right. When Lala Kent starts another Vanderpump Rules season, boom. We have the luxury of all that. And then we have some conservative talkers like Dan Bongino, Mark Levin. We have an election year coming up. And it's amazing how people turn to their favorite podcaster for information or entertainment, right? At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And that's what we're trying to do. We have 4 core areas. We have news, business, money, tech, sports, and life and entertainment. And that's life right there, isn't it?
You covered everything.
Yeah. Yep.
As we come to closer to our close, I am curious, and I've sort of intimated this in my questions about the All Voices, commercial sort of viability aside, what stories, just in your perspective, what stories haven't been told that you think should be told? And I guess a different way of saying it is, at your company, again, commercial viability aside, what pitches have you heard that you wish you were like, you know what, in my heart of hearts and in my brain, I would do everything I can to tell that story. I can't make it work financially, but that aside, I would definitely tell this story.
I'm not going to talk about some of the pitches we get, okay, because it might offend some people if they ever find out. We get a lot of pitches.
I'm sure.
We get a lot of pitches. But if I could just speak personally here for a second, as someone who thinks about retirement more and more and more, I'm thinking, what do I want to do in my retirement? I would love to travel across America and do a different voice in each episode, focusing on a non-famous American and what their life is like. And I think we need podcasting, that aspect of storytelling out there to come alive. And if I had to go out there, I think we need to hear more stories from Main Street, We need to hear stories from real people. And I think that's really lacking in many ways, because who sucks up all the oxygen? It's the celebrities.
Right.
You know, it's a controversial thing by a controversial figure. But what about the rest of America, right? Maybe that's the name of it, the rest of America, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what I would say about trying to go out and cover things, right? I'm speaking personally as a guy who used to love doing man on the street interviews. So maybe that's my future at some point, right? Going out there. Yeah.
I absolutely love it. I have a few quick questions that are what we call our student hot seat questions.
Okay, I'll try to have some quick answers.
They don't have to be quick.
Okay.
They can be thoughtful and
Okay.
responsive. The first question is, I think this is controversial. You may not feel this way. But the first question is, what is the ideal length of a podcast episode?
Oh my goodness. Oh boy. Well, it's usually, I could get really technical here. It's 26 minutes because that's the average commute time in America or whatever, right?
This is good. Keep going on this path.
Well, the idea is a lot of your daily podcasts that you get out there are about that length, because that's how long someone's commute is. I don't know what the typical commute is now, post-COVID. Yeah, we're all working home. I can get from my home office to the kitchen in like 30 seconds. So that's my commute, you know? Yeah, I'm quick, you know, and there's no traffic except for maybe the cat or dog getting in the way.
Right.
But there is no perfect length,
Yeah.
right? Because what's the purpose of your podcast? What is the format? What is your core audience? What do you hope to achieve? How often are you publishing your podcast, which is also something very important. So all these get mixed into this equation.
Right.
If you're doing a news podcast, or maybe you're doing sports updates, maybe it's 5 things. One podcast I listen to is the 7 from the Washington Post. It's 7 things provided by the Washington Post. I also listen to the Fox News radio update, because then I get 5 minutes of what they're reporting on.
Right.
So I mix all this into my routine, and we have a new podcast called America in the Morning, long-time radio show. We just launched it, and it runs about 35 minutes or so. I listen to that as well, and I get caught up. So it really varies on what your routine is. So there is no perfect length, really.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're able to answer this question, but I'm going to ask it as it was submitted. I'm adding this part, outside of the Cumulus Podcast Network, what is your favorite podcast, or who is your favorite host of a podcast?
My favorite podcast is One by Willie.
Okay.
It's done by Texas Monthly.
Okay. What is that? Who are they?
Willie Nelson.
Well, who's Texas Monthly?
Texas Monthly is a publication
Okay.
Based in Texas. They have done a beautiful series of interviews. They take one Willie Nelson song
Okay.
and they talk to someone famous.
Okay.
Could be a fellow country musician, could be a writer, could be an actor. And for 30 minutes, they break down the importance of what that song meant to that person. And Willie Nelson has been around for decades, right? Going back to the 50s and 60s. He's 90 years old, right?
Incredible.
God rest his soul eventually, but he's still with us. As we're taping this,
Sending him out
Willie's still with
early.
us, you know?
You're sending him to his grave
Yeah,
early, John.
But it's a beautiful thing
Yeah.
because it incorporates often a celebrity or someone important in the country music scene. It incorporates most often a well-known Willie Nelson song. And Willie Nelson is this phenomenal figure who he's had popular songs, he's written popular songs, so you never know what they're going to talk about. There are 4 seasons, and I have not gotten an update. I'm holding on. I'm still following that show.
say when the 5th
So
season's gonna
Texas
drop.
Monthly, I hope you're dropping a 5th season, okay? Because, you know.
You have one listener at least in John.
Yes, exactly.
I'm
Yep.
sure many others.
Yeah, and another favorite is Lost Ballparks,
Okay.
which is all about baseball history.
Okay.
So might have a Hall of Fame picture on, might look at a famous ballpark and what it meant to that city. So I listen to a lot of podcasts, not just ours.
Yeah.
I listen to our competitors.
Of course.
And then when I'm on vacation or I have downtime, that's when I listen to One by Willie, or I will check out Lost Ballparks.
That's so fun. When you said Lost Ballpark, it reminded me, and I thought this might be what you meant, but it's not. I just saw on X a ballpark, and I can't remember what city it's in, but a developer had redeveloped a ballpark and the stadium into like housing complexes, and they didn't. I mean, and it looks like a baseball park. They didn't tear it down and build a typical building. They kept the same sort of facade, the same shape, the diamond's still there. It's sort of a cool communal space for those who live there. It's super cool.
Yeah, no, that baseball is such an urban sport in many ways. When you look around, look at Fenway Park, look at Wrigley, and that's what I love about it. And the history of baseball, too. One of my favorite places in New York is the Jackie Robinson Museum. And you go in there and you realize what he truly meant, not just to baseball, but to America.
Absolutely,
You know?
absolutely. I have one last question, then I have a quick add-on. I know Jim's mad at me. We got to go. But the last question is, you sort of brought this up earlier. What do you think is after podcasting? I don't mean in
for
your
me,
life.
retirement.
No.
Retirement.
See, you are
Yes.
so quick to retire yourself. Don't wish for that too early. I mean, as in the media and journalism space, what is the next thing that you feel is bubbling up? Or
I think video podcasting is something we're going to have to keep our eye on.
Okay.
We're heavily involved in that with a lot of our top shows, whether it's the Ed Milet show or the Sean Ryan show, a phenom out of Nashville, talking to guys who served over the last 20 years in the military. They're all on fire, and they're using podcasts brilliantly.
Incredible.
So I think their podcasting is, people ask, what's your definition of a podcast?
Yeah.
My definition is what a consumer thinks it is. And notice I used the word consumer.
Yeah.
I did not say listener, did not say viewer.
Yep.
It's someone in the middle because they could listen on one day and watch on another.
Amazing.
And I think ultimately podcasting is going to become more multimedia in the years to come.
Absolutely. My additional question that I wanted to ask was, what does it feel like being in front of the microphone as opposed to being behind it?
I don't know. Some days, I used to do radio for many years.
I can tell, John. Anyone listening can tell
Yeah.
your voice.
And I get asked that. I used to be on some great stations, WTOP in Washington, WBBM in Chicago, KCBS in San Francisco, monster stations. And
You
when,
got all those letters correct.
when the Dow Jones Industrial Average would be down hundreds of points, there's an adrenaline rush, right? I miss those days, some days, and I get asked that. But ultimately, I love what I'm doing now, right?
Incredible.
I look back fondly on those, those intense radio days.
Yeah.
But I love doing what I'm doing now because I feel like I'm making a difference in an industry.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here, John. Our conversation is so helpful, I think, for me and for others listening. I think we've had an informative conversation, and also I'm grateful we could identify some salt lines that are worth sort of toying with, particularly around sort of media, journalism, democracy, disinformation. I don't want to sound humdrum or sort of alarmist, but I think you've provided us a lot to think about in terms of what the growth of this industry, as we've described it, can look like, and how we should stay attentive to potential risk and opportunities for our country and for our world and for our society in a humane way as podcasts continue to sort of take over the ecosystem.
Thanks. It was wonderful being here. And everyone out there, rate, review on Apple and Spotify, and recommend this podcast to a friend.
That is not a sponsored ad. I did not pay John
Yes.
to say that.
We practice the 3 R's, rate, review, recommend.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Conversations at the Salt Line. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.